Morning came quietly, but brought no comfort for her. She woke up on a cold piece of cardboard behind a closed grocery store, her body stiff and aching. The night had been long. Every sound, a passing car, a distant shout, the scrape of footsteps, had forced her eyes open in fear. Sleep, for her, was never deep. It was something stolen in small pieces, always ready to be taken away. Hunger greeted her before the sun did. Her stomach burned, empty and angry, but she had learned to ignore it. Hunger had become a constant companion, like a shadow that never left. She wrapped her thin jacket tighter around herself, though it did little against the cold. The jacket had once belonged to someone else. Most of her things had. As the city slowly woke up, she blended into the background. People walked past her without looking down. Shoes brushed near her hands, coats brushed past her shoulders, but no one stopped. To them, she was part of the street, like trash, like dust, like something that had always been there and always would be. She stood up and dusted herself off, keeping her eyes low. She had learned that eye contact invited trouble. Some people looked at her with disgust, others with fear. Most didn't look at all. Once, long ago, she had been seen. She passed a bakery and smelled fresh bread. Her steps slowed, her heart aching with a memory she tried to bury. There had been a kitchen once. Warm light, laughter, a table where everyone sat together. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now, like a story she had heard but never lived. Loss had come fast and without mercy. One moment she had a family, a place to belong. The next, everything was gone. Death, betrayal, and promises that broke like glass had pushed her here, step by painful step. She didn't talk about it. Some wounds bled more when touched. The street had taught her hard lessons. She knew which corners were safe and which were not. She knew how to listen without turning her head, how to move quickly when danger crept close. At night, she chose places where light still reached, even if it meant less warmth. Survival was about choices, small ones that meant staying alive another day. A man dropped a coin near her feet by accident. She waited. He didn't notice. Slowly, carefully, she picked it up, not stealing, just surviving. She whispered a quiet thank you anyway. Gratitude, she believed, was the last thing no one could take from her. Despite everything, she had rules. She never lied to get money. She never took what someone clearly needed more than she did. When she saw someone weaker than herself, a child, an older man shaking with cold, she shared what little she had. The street was cruel, but she refused to let it turn her cruel too. Loneliness followed her everywhere. At night, when the noise faded, it sat beside her like an old ache. She missed being known, missed someone saying her name with kindness. Sometimes she wondered if she still mattered at all. But deep inside, beneath the dirt and pain, something remained unbroken. She still believed her life had value. She still believed that doing the right thing mattered, even if no one noticed. She still believed that one day, somehow, this edge she lived on would not be the end of her story. As she walked toward the busy street, disappearing once again into the crowd, she had no idea that before the day was over, someone would finally see her. And everything would change. The city looked different from the top. From the glass walls of his office, everything below seemed small and controlled. Cars moved like toys. People looked like shadows. The world obeyed lines, numbers, and schedules, just the way he liked it. He stood alone, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, staring out at the skyline he helped shape. Every building, every deal, every rising stock number was proof of his power. He had built an empire from nothing. That was what people admired about him. That was the story told in magazines and boardrooms. But power was heavy. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Another demand. Another reminder that someone wanted a piece of what he owned. He silenced it without reading. Lately, even success felt loud and exhausting. The office behind him was silent and expensive. Dark wood, soft lights, art worth more than most people's homes. Yet the space felt cold, empty. There were no photos on the desk, no signs of a life beyond work. Everything here served a purpose, but nothing offered comfort. He walked to his desk and sat down slowly. His chest felt tight. He paused, pressing his fingers against the edge of the table until the feeling passed. Stress, the doctors had said. Too many hours. Too little rest. He had nodded and ignored them. There was always another deal waiting. On the wall, a screen displayed news headlines. His company name was everywhere. So were rumors. Whispers of rivals pushing back. Investors growing restless. Trusted partners watching for weakness. In his world, kindness was seen as weakness, and trust was always risky. He had learned that lesson early. People didn't see him. They saw his money, his influence, his last name printed in bold letters. Every handshake carried an expectation. Every smile wanted something in return. Real connection had become rare, maybe even dangerous. Sometimes, late at night, he wondered what would happen if he lost it all. Would anyone stay? Would anyone care? The thought made him uneasy. A sharp pain hit his head, sudden and strong. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly, counting the seconds like the doctor had taught him. The pain faded, but the warning stayed. His body was speaking now, asking for rest he refused to give. He stood again and straightened his jacket. Weakness was not allowed. Not here. Outside, his security team waited. Black cars, dark glasses, quiet strength. Even a simple walk required protection. The world saw him as untouchable, but danger followed him everywhere, hidden behind polite smiles and friendly words. As he stepped into the elevator, his reflection stared back at him. Strong, successful, alone. He barely recognized the man he had become. The elevator doors closed, cutting him off from the view above. As it descended, his phone buzzed once more. This time he looked. Another warning. Another problem. Another reason not to slow down. He exhaled slowly, unaware that his carefully controlled world was about to collide with something he couldn't buy, command, or predict. Down below, among the noise and chaos of the street, a moment waited for him. One that would strip away his power and expose his emptiness. The street was alive with noise. Car horns blared. Vendors shouted. People rushed past each other with eyes fixed on phones and clocks. It was one of those places where everything happened at once and nothing truly mattered to anyone. The air felt heavy, thick with movement and impatience. She stood near the corner, holding a small paper cup with a few coins inside. Her eyes stayed low, but her ears were always alert. The street had taught her to listen before she looked. Danger often arrived quietly. Then the black cars pulled up. They didn't belong here. Too clean, too guarded, too important. People slowed down, curious. Some whispered. Others stared. Power had a way of changing the air around it. He stepped out of the car, surrounded by security. Tall, confident, expensive from head to toe. Phones lifted in secret as people tried to capture his face. To the crowd, he was a headline walking on 2 feet. But she noticed something else. His steps were slightly uneven. His jaw was tight. His eyes looked distant, unfocused, like his mind was somewhere else. Sweat touched his temple despite the cool air. He lifted a hand to his head, then dropped it quickly, as if embarrassed. He was not as strong as he looked. The noise of the street pressed in on him. Voices overlapped. Sounds echoed. His phone rang again. He glanced down at it while walking, distracted, pulled into whatever crisis waited on that glowing screen. That was when she saw it. A man moving against the flow of the crowd. Too calm. Too close. His hand was hidden inside his jacket. His eyes were locked on the billionaire, not the people around him. Not the cars. Just the target. Her heart jumped. She had seen that look before. On the street, danger had a face. And this was it. She looked around. No one else noticed. People were busy watching wealth, not threat. Security was focused ahead, clearing a path, trusting routine. The billionaire kept walking, unaware, one step closer to disaster. Time seemed to slow. Her mind raced. She could turn away. That was the safer choice. No one would blame her. She was invisible anyway. But if she stayed silent, something terrible would happen. She felt it in her bones. Fear rose in her chest, but so did something stronger. Instinct. She moved, pushing through the crowd. She reached him just as he lifted his head. There was no time to explain, no time to shout. Words would fail, so she acted. Her hand struck his face with a sharp, sudden sound. The slap echoed. Everything stopped. The billionaire stumbled back, shocked. The crowd gasped. Security moved instantly, grabbing her arms. Anger, confusion, and judgment filled the air. Eyes turned hard. Voices rose. To them, she was just a homeless woman who crossed a line. No one saw the danger she had stopped. No one yet understood that in one brave, desperate moment, fate had collided, and both their lives had just changed forever. The moment after the slap felt heavier than the noise before it. For a second, the street went silent. Then chaos rushed back in, louder and sharper than before. People shouted. Phones lifted higher. Faces twisted with shock and judgment. Security reacted without thinking. Strong hands grabbed her arms and twisted them behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulders, but she didn't cry out. She had learned long ago that showing pain only made things worse. Her feet barely touched the ground as she was pulled away from him. "Did you see that?" someone yelled. "She attacked him," another voice shouted. To them, the story was already clear. The billionaire stood frozen, his hand pressed to his cheek. His face burned, not from the slap alone, but from the insult. No one had ever touched him like that. Not in public. Not without permission. His pride rose fast, pushing aside the confusion. His eyes locked on her, filled with anger and disbelief. "How dare she?" people whispered. "She's crazy. She should be arrested." She looked around, her heart pounding. So many eyes. So much hate. No one asked why. No one cared. In their eyes, she was guilty the moment she raised her hand. Fear crawled up her spine. She tried to speak, but her voice felt trapped in her chest. Words wouldn't come out right anyway. They never did when she needed them most. The billionaire straightened his suit, his expression hardening. Years of control rushed back into place. Authority settled on him like armor. He nodded once to his security team. "Take her away," his silence seemed to say. To him, she was just another problem to remove. As she was dragged toward the edge of the crowd, something strange happened. One of the guards paused. His eyes flicked behind them. His hand tightened on his radio. A sharp command was whispered, urgent and low. Another guard moved quickly, scanning the crowd with new tension in his posture. The billionaire noticed it too. "What is it?" he asked, his voice tight. No answer came right away. Behind them, someone shouted. A man was on the ground, held down by police. His jacket lay open, something dark and dangerous visible inside before it was quickly covered. The crowd buzzed again, but this time with fear. The billionaire's anger wavered, just for a second. His eyes drifted back to the woman struggling in the guard's grip. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. Not with guilt, but with something else. Relief, like someone who had stopped a falling glass just before it shattered. Confusion crept into his chest, but pride spoke louder. She still crossed the line, he told himself. No one has the right to touch me. She was pushed down onto the curb, her knees scraping the concrete. The pain was sharp, but the shame hurt more. Heads turned away now, satisfied. Justice, they believed, had been served. As she sat there, surrounded by strangers who saw her as nothing more than trouble, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Then she remembered the look in that man's eyes before the slap, and she knew she hadn't. Above her, standing tall and protected, the billionaire watched the scene unfold, unaware that the truth he was ignoring was already beginning to crack the world he thought he controlled. The truth did not arrive loudly. It came quietly, slipping past pride and power, settling heavily in the billionaire's chest. Inside the security vehicle, the air was tense. Phones buzzed. Radios crackled. His head still throbbed, but now it was not just pain, it was confusion. He replayed the moment again and again. The slap. The crowd. Her eyes. Not angry. Not wild. Focused. Afraid. Too aware. One of the guards stepped forward, his face tight. He spoke carefully, choosing each word like it could change everything. "The man we detained," he said, lowering his voice, "was carrying a weapon." Silence filled the space. The billionaire looked up sharply. "What kind of weapon?" The guard hesitated. "The kind meant to kill." The words hit harder than the slap ever had. Images rushed into his mind. The man moving too calmly. The hidden hand. The moment when time seemed to slow. His chest tightened as understanding pushed its way through denial. She hadn't attacked him. She had saved him. His breath caught. For the first time that day, the noise of the world faded. All he could see was her being grabbed, shoved, judged, treated like a criminal while he stood protected by wealth and power. Guilt burned deep and fast. He had been angry because his pride was wounded, because someone he saw as invisible dared to touch him. He had not asked why. He had not listened. He had chosen comfort over truth, and she had paid the price. He remembered how the crowd had reacted, how quickly they believed the worst about her, how easily they defended him without knowing anything. He had walked away, shielded, respected. She had been left on the curb, alone. The difference between them suddenly felt unbearable. Money had built walls around him. Security, silence, control. But none of it had protected him from death. A stranger had. Someone with nothing. Someone the world refused to see. His hands trembled slightly as he rested them on his knees. He had closed deals worth billions without fear. Yet this moment shook him more than any loss ever had. "I was wrong," he whispered, the words tasting unfamiliar. For years, he believed power made him safe. That money solved problems. That influence controlled outcomes. But today, instinct and courage had mattered more than anything he owned. And he had nearly crushed them. Outside, through the tinted window, he caught a glimpse of her again, sitting alone, small against the wide street. Her shoulders were tense, her face unreadable. No comfort, no protection, just survival. Something broke inside him. He thought of all the times people had bowed to him, apologized, stepped aside. How often had he mistaken fear for respect? Silence for loyalty? She had asked for nothing. And still, she had acted. The vehicle slowed. His decision formed before doubt could stop it. "Turn back," he said firmly. The guards exchanged looks, surprised. But they obeyed. As the car moved, his heart beat faster. Not with fear, but with resolve. This time, he would not look away. This time, he would face the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. Because the world he thought he understood was cracking open. And standing at the center of that crack was a homeless woman who had reminded him of something he had lost long ago. His humanity. The black car stopped a few steps away from her. She looked up slowly, her body stiff with caution. Experience had taught her that nothing good ever arrived in expensive cars. Trouble usually did. Control did. People who wanted something always did. When the door opened and he stepped out, her jaw tightened. Of course, the billionaire stood there without the crowd this time. No cameras, no shouting voices. Just him, his security at a distance, and the woman he had allowed to be humiliated. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He broke the silence first, his voice calm but heavy. He did not stand too close. He did not order anyone to move her. That alone confused her. "I was wrong," he said. The words surprised them both. She studied his face, searching for lies. People with power often pretended to feel sorry. It was easy, cheap. An apology had never fed her or kept her safe. "I don't want your money," she said quietly, turning her gaze away. "So if that's why you're here, you can leave." Her voice shook, but her spine stayed straight. He nodded slowly. "I'm not here to give charity." That made her look back. "I'm here because I owe you my life." The truth hung between them, fragile and sharp. Her first instinct was to laugh. Her second was to run. Instead, she stayed still, arms wrapped around herself like armor. Trust was dangerous. Trust had destroyed her before. "You didn't owe me anything before," she replied. "And you still don't." He felt the sting of that honesty. She was right. The world had never owed her anything, and it had taken everything anyway. "I should have listened," he said. "I should have protected you the way you protected me." She swallowed hard. The memory of hands grabbing her arms flashed through her mind. The concrete scraping her knees. The crowd's eyes. That kind of shame didn't fade easily. "People like you always say that after," she said, "when it's already over." Her words were not cruel. They were tired. He took a slow breath. "I can't change what happened, but I can change what happens next." She shook her head. "I don't need saving." "I know," he answered quickly. "That's why I'm asking, not deciding." That stopped her. No one had asked her anything in a long time. Still, fear tightened her chest. Help came with strings. It always did. She had learned that the hard way, from family who turned away, from people she trusted who hurt her, from promises that broke when she needed them most. I survived on my own, she said. I'll keep doing that. I don't doubt your strength, he replied. I respect it. Respect. Another word that sounded strange in her world. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Strength didn't stop them from leaving. Or hurting me. Pain slipped through her words before she could stop it. He didn't interrupt. Didn't rush her. For the first time, someone with power simply listened. I'm not asking you to trust me today, he said gently. Just don't disappear. She looked at him for a long moment. The anger was still there. So was the fear. But beneath it, something else stirred. A small, guarded hope she hated herself for feeling. I'll think about it, she said finally. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door left slightly open. As he stepped back, giving her space, both of them understood the truth. Healing would not come quickly, but for the first time, it had a place to begin. Safety felt strange to her. The room was clean. Too clean. A bed with white sheets sat untouched near the window. Warm light filled the space, and silence wrapped around her like something she didn't trust. She stood near the door, her bag clutched tight in her hands, as if someone might suddenly tell her to leave. Her body refused to relax. Every small sound made her tense. A passing car outside, a knock down the hall. Even kindness made her uneasy. On the streets, danger was clear. Here, it was quiet, and that scared her more. At night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought memories with it. Faces from the past. Voices that promised love and delivered pain. She woke up shaking, her heart racing, reminding herself where she was. Safe. Supposedly. Across the city, he sat in a meeting room filled with people who spoke in sharp tones and careful words. Screens showed headlines. Her face, blurred but recognizable, appeared beside his name. Billionaire involved in street incident. Homeless woman claims hero role. His jaw tightened. Some called her a liar. Others called it a publicity stunt. Rivals used the moment to question his leadership. Investors demanded answers. Control, the thing he relied on most, was slipping through his fingers. His first instinct was to fix everything. To use money. To use power. To make the problem disappear. But this wasn't a business deal. When he visited her, he tried too hard. Asked too many questions. Offered solutions before listening. He wanted to help, but help, to him, had always meant taking charge. She noticed. I didn't ask for all this, she said one evening, her voice tight. I didn't ask to be talked about like I'm some story. I know, he replied quickly. I just want to protect you. She looked at him, pain flashing in her eyes. That's not protection. That's control. The word hit him hard. He fell silent, realizing how close he was to repeating the same mistake. He had mistaken saving for owning, caring for commanding. She struggled too. Some days, she wanted to run back to the streets. At least there, she knew the rules. Here, she felt weak, dependent, like one wrong step would send her falling again. Then the past came knocking. A face she recognized appeared nearby. Someone who once promised safety and delivered betrayal. Her breath caught when she saw him. Old fear rushed back, fast and sharp. She almost disappeared that night. He found her packing, panic in her movements. I can't do this, she said, tears spilling before she could stop them. Every time I feel okay, it comes back. The fear, the shame. He wanted to stop her, to tell her she was safe. Instead, he did something new. He listened. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted, but I know you don't deserve to face it alone. Her hands trembled as she lowered the bag. For the first time, she spoke the truth out loud. About the people who used her kindness. The ones who walked away when she needed them most. The nights she blamed herself for surviving. He spoke too. About the loneliness behind the glass towers. The way power had replaced trust. How he didn't know who he was without control. The honesty was painful, but real. Healing didn't happen in a straight line. Some days were calm. Others were heavy. But slowly they learned. She learned that needing help didn't erase her strength. He learned that letting go didn't make him weak. Outside, the noise continued. The pressure. The judgment. But inside that small shared space, something stronger was growing. Not perfection, but patience. And for both of them, that was a beginning worth fighting for. The bond between them did not arrive like a sudden spark. It grew quietly, in shared silences, in small moments, in the way he learned to slow down when speaking to her, and the way she slowly stopped standing near the door, ready to leave. What connected them was not romance at first, but recognition. They saw the broken places in each other, and did not look away. She began to laugh again, softly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. He began to rest, really rest, for the first time in years. They did not fix each other, but they reminded each other what it felt like to be human. Then everything fell apart. The story exploded across the media overnight. Headlines twisted the truth. Old enemies spoke up. Someone from his inner circle leaked a false version of events, claiming the entire incident was staged. The weapon, the danger, her courage, all questioned. And she was blamed. Online voices called her a liar, a manipulator. Some said she had planned it all to get close to him. Others dug into her past, exposing wounds she had tried so hard to bury. Fear returned fast. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating. The safety she had worked so hard to accept cracked beneath her feet. One night, she stood alone, staring at the city lights, realizing she knew this feeling too well. This was the moment when people left. "I can't do this again," she told him, her voice breaking. "I won't survive being torn apart like this." He saw the truth in her eyes. Not weakness, exhaustion. "I can end this," he said. "I can shut it down. Make it all go away." She looked at him. "How?" "By letting them believe it was nothing," he answered. "A misunderstanding. A lie." The words hung heavy. It would protect his company, his name, his future. It would cost him nothing, but it would cost her everything. She shook her head slowly. "If you do that, don't come looking for me again." He felt the weight of the choice press down on him harder than any deal he had ever faced. For the first time, love asked something real of him. She packed her bag, tears falling freely now. Walking away would hurt, but staying might destroy her. She had learned the price of trusting the wrong people. As she reached the door, he spoke. "No," he said, his voice steady. "I won't let them erase you." The next day, he stood alone before the world. No lawyers speaking for him. No excuses. No silence. He told the truth. He admitted his failure, his pride, his mistake. He named the danger. He honored her courage. He took responsibility for all of it. The backlash was immediate. Stocks fell. Allies turned away. Power slipped from his grasp. But something else took its place. Integrity. When she saw him again, there were no grand speeches. No promises. Just two people standing in the quiet aftermath of sacrifice. She reached for his hand, not because she needed saving, but because she chose to stay. And that choice changed everything. The room was full, but the air felt tight. Cameras lined the walls. Reporters whispered. Every eye waited for him to speak. This was familiar ground for the billionaire. Public spaces, sharp questions, controlled answers. He had stood in places like this many times before, but never like this. His hands were steady, but his chest felt open, exposed. For the first time, he was not here to protect his image. He was here to tell the truth, no matter the cost. He stepped forward. "I failed," he said, his voice clear and firm. "I failed because I let my pride speak louder than my conscience." A ripple moved through the room. He talked about power, how it had blinded him, how he had been surrounded by people, yet deeply alone, how easy it had been to dismiss someone simply because the world had taught him she didn't matter. Then he spoke about her, not as a headline, not as a problem, but as a person. "She saved my life," he said, "not because she owed me anything, but because she chose courage over fear." Across the room, she stood quietly. This time, she was not pushed to the side, not hidden, not spoken over. She stood where everyone could see her, shoulders straight, eyes clear. Her heart beat fast, but she did not shrink. For years, her voice had been ignored. Today, it was waiting. When he finished, he stepped back, not above her, not in front of her, but beside her. The room went silent. She took a breath. Her hands trembled, but she did not hide them. She had spent too long making herself small to survive. "I was invisible for a long time," she began. People looked through me like I wasn't real. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. I didn't act for attention. I acted because I knew what danger looks like. I knew what happens when people don't listen. She spoke about the streets, about fear, about the shame of being judged without being known, about how easy it is for the world to decide who matters. And I'm done letting others define me, she said. Something shifted. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't begging for belief. She was standing in her truth, unafraid. The power in the room changed. The billionaire looked at her, not as someone he saved, but as someone who had saved him. An equal, a mirror to the parts of himself he had avoided. In that moment, hierarchy fell away. There was no billionaire, no homeless woman, only two people who had faced their worst selves and chosen to grow. Forgiveness didn't arrive as a grand gesture. It came quietly in the space between them, in the understanding that mistakes had been made and owned. As they walked away together, not ahead or behind one another, the world felt different, lighter, because transformation had finally replaced fear. And both of them stepped forward, not into power but into truth. Time moved forward quietly and without rush. The city was still loud, still crowded, still unfair in many ways, but something had changed. Not just in headlines or public opinion, but in the lives of two people who once stood on opposite edges of the same street. She no longer slept on cardboard. Her mornings began with sunlight through a small window and the sound of life waking outside. She worked now, not because someone handed her a future, but because she chose to build one. She volunteered at shelters, speaking to women who carried the same fear she once did. When she told her story, she did not speak of shame. She spoke of survival. People listened. She dressed simply, walked confidently. Her past did not vanish, but it no longer defined her. The street had taught her strength. Loss had taught her empathy. And courage had given her a voice that could not be ignored. When people asked about the slap, she did not flinch. It was instinct, she said. And sometimes instinct saves lives. Across the city, he lived differently too. The glass walls remained, but the man inside them had changed. He took fewer meetings. He listened more. He walked the streets without escorts when he could, reminding himself of how fragile life truly was. He stepped away from deals that cost people their dignity. He invested in programs that gave second chances, not as charity, but as belief. His name still carried weight, but now it carried purpose. Wealth no longer defined him. Humanity did. They did not rush love. They did not pretend healing was complete. Some scars stayed. Some fears lingered. But they faced them together, without power or pity standing between them. On quiet evenings, they returned to that same street. Not for attention, not for memory, but for meaning. They stood at the corner where fate had collided, where fear met courage, and misunderstanding met truth. The noise still echoed. The crowd still moved fast. But in that chaos, something beautiful had been born. A moment that could have ended in tragedy became a turning point. The slap was no longer remembered as an act of anger. It was remembered as a moment of destiny. As they walked away hand in hand, not leading, not following, the future opened before them, uncertain but honest. And for the first time in a long time, both of them knew exactly who they were. Not a homeless woman, not a billionaire, but two lives redeemed by one brave choice. And a second chance they refused to waste.